Welcome to DHSI 2021 Virtual Edition. This is the Collection Builder class, hands-on with Collection Builder. I'm going to give a quick kind of overview and history of the tool just to start us off, and we're going to introduce ourselves. We didn't think we had time. If the participants continue to be about this level, we might have time to do quick introductions later on. But for now, we're just going to kind of move forward because there's a lot to do this week. We did a run through last week, and we saw that with our fellows at our Center for Digital Inquiry and Learning here, and we saw that we need to move. But we're gonna as part of the homework, you're going to introduce yourself via GitHub issue, and we'll later on in the week show off your sites. So to start, I wanted to say that we're coming to you from Moscow, Idaho. Where the University of Idaho is located. University of Idaho is on the ceded grounds of the Nez Perce tribe and the traditional homelands of the Palouse Band of Indians. We acknowledge their presence here and recognize their continuing connection to the land, the water, and their ancestors. There's a lot of connections here to the Nez Perce, and we've got collections that we work with them in projects, and Washington State University, our neighbor to the west, also does too. And try to do as much as we can to acknowledge them and their connection and importance to this land. So quickly, we'll just introduce ourselves and kind of tell you who we are. This is a very weak slide. My name is Devin Becker. I am the head of data and digital services here at the University of Idaho Library, and I also direct the Center for Digital Inquiry and Learning, CDIL. We have been around, I've been here for 10 years, and CDIL has been around for about 5. And been driving this project with my team here for about 3 years. So Olivia?
I am Olivia Wikle, and I'm the Digital Initiatives Librarian here at the University of Idaho. And I've been here about 3 years now and have been working with Devin and Evan on CollectionBuilder ever since I started. But I also work a lot with our digital collections here, as well as our digital scholarship projects.
And I'm Evan Williamson, Digital Infrastructure Librarian. Working with Devin, we kind of tossed this idea back and forth since probably 2017. And so it's kind of fun to keep seeing it evolve and develop and create new and interesting stuff with it. So excited for this week.
Yeah, and so quick notes before we get going. These are being recorded again, so if you don't want you to be on video, turn it off. And this format is, as you all are probably aware, is not the best format for workshops following along on your, especially if you're on a laptop and have 2 little screens and things like that. Part of the impetus for recording these is so that you can go back later and go back over the steps if you need to. And we will also, we have office hours each day, and we're very available to meeting with you to catch you up or things like that. So things will break. We will have frustrations. Use those as learning opportunities. And we're here to really, be available as much as we possibly can this week for you, so that we can really help you learn this tool. So Collection Builder, this is the brief overview. So this is our site, collectionbuilder.github.io, and our little, you do the metadata, Collection Builder makes it work is our little tagline there. We are, we've been under development since about 2018, 2017. And since then, Collection Builder for us at the University of Idaho Library is the foundation for all of our digital collections, pretty much all of our digital scholarship projects. The code is used in some format. It's also the web. A lot of our website features have taken some of the code from Collection Builder, and that approach to our website, which we call libstatic, or using kind of static web. Open source technologies on websites is also the way we approach our website, and we developed that using Jekyll, the static tool that you're going to learn this week. We are currently on a planning grant from the Institute for Museums and Library Services. This is our 2nd year on that project, which is a no-cost extension based on the COVID year. We're currently hoping to get a couple more grants to really support this for the next several years. An IMLS project grant would be like a 3-year grant, which would add a person and give us a lot more support for this project going forward. We also have some pedagogical focused grants and for NEH, and a more technical one out of Lyrasis that we're hoping to get. We've been really focused on developing partners and collaborators over this last grant period. Our major kind of official partners are the State Library of North Carolina, New College of Florida, the University of Houston's U.S. Latino Digital Humanities Program, also known as the Recovery Program, and the Latah County Historical Society, which is our local historical society. And we've worked with the first two. We've already kind of done their projects, and they've developed kind of either full digital collections or a major multi-collection site. And we'll be working with our second two partners primarily this summer, and then we'll continue to support them going on. We've had a lot of collaborators and users over the course of these 2 years. This is just a list of some of them. It started to kind of pop up in different countries and things like that. We've worked with a librarian from Namibia recently, which has been really fun, and some other things in Germany and Australia and a couple other places. We have some esteemed advisors from the colleges, from the universities and colleges listed there as well. Evan's going to give a more of a technical brief in a second, but just to give a real, kind of a basic kind of how it all works. It's really important, and these are the most important things, and that's what we're going to really focus on today, is that we have excellent metadata and well-named and ready to go objects. Like any digital collection, these are the foundational blocks, and we built the code to reward that work. CollectionBuilder is a folder of files, and it works over the metadata and the objects to build out the visualizations and options that you'll start developing this week. These are the visualizations, and I'm just going to walk us through a short look at the actual site itself. So this is our demo site for CollectionBuilder GH, which is the type of CollectionBuilder we'll be working with today. It's based on making it available on GitHub pages. And this is what it looks like. Come right out of the box. This is the home page, and the home page kind of is a reflection of the rest of the pages with a little word cloud kind of options here, some items, and a list of the types of items that are here, and a large image that can be kind of that you can set as sort of your featured image for the site. The browse page is really the engine for discovery for these items, and it lists all of the items on that page. And then you can filter those items by clicking some of these or doing a free text search, and using that to do that. You also have a filter button here, which will allow you to sort those items as well for easier discovery. And so all the other pages, a lot of them kind of feed back into that. So this is a word cloud of subjects that are being used. And if you click on one, it goes right back to the browse page. And the locations page is similar like that. And so if you want to see everything in Moscow, we can go and check that out. And then you can also kind of limit by object type. So this is the MP4. So these are the videos that are available. You could do that by PDF and other things as well. Our map page, which uses Leaflet.js library, which we'll talk about, has clustered availability for, you have to have latitude and longitude in your metadata to enable this. And so you click in here and you can see some of those here. And if you want to see where we are, let's see here, we're right, I'm going to go back. And so there's also connections within the item pages themselves to view on the map. So that can take you and center you right to that item. And we are right here at the library. We also have timeline, a kind of a table-based timeline using the years in your metadata to build it. We also have a timeline.js availability, which we'll teach during this week. And we focused a lot on, Jekyll's really good at this, is transforming the data you have into other data formats that you might use. So this is our data page, and these data formats are also collected on our front page here. But metadata, we formulate and push out all of these data formats so that it can be machine readable, and so that other researchers or yourself or your own institution can reuse them. And then we've also spent a lot of time on our about pages, our interpretive pages for the collections that allow you to write with the collections themselves to include images, PDFs, videos, audio, other Bootstrap features, and Bootstrap is the library that we work with for CollectionBuilder. So that's my sort of brief introduction, and I will stop sharing my screen. Just kind of an overview of that's what a CollectionBuilder site looks like. And now Evan's going to take it away, Olivia's going to take it away and talk to you about the documentation that you can use which is really important for this week and kind of like staying up to date with what we're working on and following the steps there as well.
Okay, so I just put the link to our documentation in the chat, and we've spent a lot of time developing really robust documentation. So we hope you guys use it this week. We've worked it into your homework, kind of lining it up with each task you'll do. So you can always come to the documentation to read about what we're doing in class if you didn't catch something, if something's not making sense in the videos. And that, of course, is always along with feel free to email us at any point too, and we'd be happy to help you and jump on Zoom with that. But just a little bit of an introduction to how it's set up. It's set up in sort of the stages that you would go through and learn CollectionBuilder. So most of you have probably already been through the software section to get ready for this week's workshop. And today we're going to go through the repository section, metadata and objects and site config. So all of these are broken up into the portions of the steps that you need to follow, but it just follows the way that you would naturally set up a collection. So kind of keep that in mind as you're going through all of these sections. A few other things are down here at the bottom. We have a glossary that covers kind of a wide range of tools and packages that CollectionBuilder uses. So you'll probably hear us mention all of these words throughout this week and get a little bit of an introduction to them. But if you want to know more, you can always come to the glossary. And we've put a lot of links out to learning resources as well as the resources themselves, so you can go and learn more directly from the source. And there is a little extra section here too, as you get into, maybe you get really into CollectionBuilder and are into the more advanced parts of it and want some more opportunities to learn about how you can manipulate your objects. We have a few command line utilities here, as well as some software for spreadsheets and image editing that you can check out as well. And then at the very bottom, there's a very, very quick start that you probably wouldn't be able to follow as a beginner, but maybe coming back in the future, you just need a little reminder. So we have this really, really brief overview of how you can create a collection. And then one of our favorite parts of the CollectionBuilder documentation is that it allows you to search for whatever part you're at in your collection building process. So if I'm looking for how to theme my site, for instance, I can type in theme, and then I can scroll through and see all of the pages where that word is mentioned. And maybe I'm really interested in my subjects page and what I can do to manipulate that. And so it takes you right to that area that you need to go to. So don't forget about the search. And again, the documentation will be here the whole time as you're working through your homework. We've included specific links to where everything is located in the documentation. So check that out when you have a chance. And now I'm going to turn it to Evan.
Hey, so yeah, thank you for that little intro. I think, so I'm sharing right now my File Explorer, because there's going to be kind of three components that we go through this week, and that's really starting with objects, digital objects in this case. Most of these collections that you're going to be building this year or this week are going to be based in having some digital objects like PDFs and JPEGs is going to be the main things, but MP3s and videos are also work. So we're going to start with some objects. We're also going to talk today about the metadata part. And it's really important to get those two things lined up to build a GitHub Pages CollectionBuilder site. When you're used to using like a content management system like Omeka or Content DM, a lot of those details about file naming and having conventions are enforced by these databases and these application systems. And so when you're doing a static web approach, like we'll be doing this week, you're going to actually have to enforce some of those rules on yourself. And so getting those details right ends up being pretty important. And it just takes a little bit of attention to make sure that you kind of understand how that's working. And so again, just to emphasize what Devin already mentioned, is that in the end, CollectionBuilder templates are just a folder of files on your computer. And so I'm on I'm on Windows right now, and this is my File Explorer. And here's my CollectionBuilder GH template. And I'm just going in there, and you can see it's just a bunch of files. And what we're working with today is going to be setting up your objects, which hopefully you had a chance to kind of pull some things together that you wanted to work with, or you can use some of our demo objects. But if you're going to look in this objects folder, And you can see that I've got, 4 different demo objects here. And if you're on Windows, you might not see file extensions by default. And you on Mac and on Linux, I believe that you will see them by default, but seeing those file extensions is pretty important to make sure that you're getting everything right. So I like to go into this view if you're on Windows. On the tab up here, there's a view button, and right here, there's some options with checkboxes, and it says file name extensions. And if I have that off, then I don't see those file name extensions, which can make working with your collection a lot harder. So make sure you click that little checkbox to see the extensions. And I also like to click this little checkbox that says hidden items, because there is going to be some hidden items in your template. This is your piece of code, and when you're working in this kind of environment, you do want to actually see what's entirely in this folder of files. So just make sure that you can see extensions if you're on Windows, and if you're on Mac, there might be a similar option, or there is a similar option, but I think by default it is on. So you'll see those extensions there. The second part about that is that you need to make sure that your file names are going to be good for the web. All these items are going to end up on the web. And what's important there is that you don't have a bunch of weird characters in your file names. You want to spend some attention on what those file names look like, and you're going to avoid a lot of issues if you just do it right from the start. And so we say the best practice, and you don't always have to follow the best practice, but the best possible practice is that you're going to have all lowercase, no strange characters, no spaces. So you can use like underscore in your file name and some numbers and some letters, but nothing else. And it's really makes it easier if everything's all lowercase, but it's not required. But file names and your metadata for file names are going to be case sensitive, because the web is case sensitive. So Windows computers and Mac computers, they treat a file name with a capital letter as the same as the same file name with a lowercase letter. But on web servers, which are mostly run on Linux, they are case sensitive. And so you'll have these really unexpected results where it seems like your site is working and then suddenly it doesn't work when it gets on the live web. And it's because of that case sensitivity in file names. And so just make sure that you're being really careful with it. And you're going to make sure that this exact file name that you have here in your folder of files and the extension is going to exactly translate, including the case, into your metadata when you get to that point. And if you can do that, just starting out with that good file naming and paying some attention there and paying attention to moving those files around, then you're going to avoid a whole bunch of problems going forward. And I think that's really all I wanted to mention there. There's a whole bunch of guidelines about like what kind of objects are going to work well with this GH kind of demo project. And just keep in mind that this kind of, we're going to be working with CollectionBuilder GH, and it's designed for hosting on GitHub pages. So there's some kind of limitations to it. It's really good for prototyping. And if you have a larger collection in mind, you might want to have a temporary kind of smaller prototype set of items that you want to work with for the week. And then there's other options to be able to have a fully fledged larger collection. But it's really nice to be able to prototype it with GH, because all of those kind of configurations that you build up, you can actually translate into the more fully fledged templates later on. And there's some information about file sizes and kind of the general guidelines right on that GH objects page. So I'll let you work on that if you need to. And I'm turning it back over to Olivia or Devin, right?
It's Devin,
Yes, it's me.
All right, sorry.
So yeah, today for some of you, I mean, I'm assuming it's somewhat of a review, or but I think it's but it's really important stuff for this, and these are the things we've seen the most, that if you don't pay attention right away, you'll start to have little problems going forward, and it detracts from your ability to really learn the tool and kind of move forward with that. So let me get back into here. So I'm going to talk about metadata here, and just say, we've got a little bit in the actual course pack about our spreadsheet use and why we use Google Sheets primarily for our sheets. We do a lot of collaboration with students and fellows and faculty, so Sheets is great for that. We use a couple of different Google products here, and we understand the amount of tracking and difficulty that using sort of, you know, complications that using Google stuff does, and we want to make sure that we have alternatives. You know, OpenRefine is one that Evan uses a lot, and I use, and Olivia uses as well. We also have this LibreOffice Calc if you want to use a desktop version. But for kind of overview right now, and for this kind of little tutorial, we're going to use Google Sheets because it does facilitate that. And another reason we use that and we don't use Excel, for instance, is because Excel adds adds a level of doesn't use UTF-8 in the correct way for transferring it into a Jekyll project, and adds certain features that will break the site. So Excel also will automatically kind of convert fields, especially dates, into different formats, which, you know, I found over the course of my career is an endless frustration. So that is something also to be aware of, and Google Sheets is much better about allowing you to kind of more easily define and work with your material. So the thing to think about primarily are the required fields that make this template, this model, work for you. And so for GH, which is the one we'll be working on primarily this week, there are 4 major ones to remember. The object ID, which is the kind of key for all of the items that, and we'll look at that in a second. The file name, which can either be an external file name or a file name within the project itself. And you know, make sure to go to this location and look at this again. The title, which, you know, you want to have a title, and that the collection builder will still work without titles, but it'll look weird. There will be some other things that are missing, and this is the one that people often kind of miss. But we have based a lot of the logic within the code on the format field within a metadata spreadsheet. So these are the main formats that most people use and that you should add to your collection. So for an image/JPEG, and these are the MIME types. For document of a PDF, an application/PDF, MP3, etc. And we use those video and audio portions in application and image to build out a lot of features. So if you ever have something wrong, a lot of times go back to that format field and you'll see that. So I have a quick little kind of tutorial about using Google Sheets here. And this is based on, didn't go. Okay, so this is, and so the link here goes to kind of the step-by-step, and this is definitely like a review for some of you, but it just kind of helps to watch someone put together one of these spreadsheets in a quick way. And let me do this. I've just gone through a little, sorry about this. I'm going to restore my old version because I just went through a little practice, and of course I have I've made it better. So I'm going to get it back to its original sort of, you know, unformatted state, and kind of take you through a step-by-step kind of run through here quickly of ways that you can kind of add and work with Google Sheets with formulas and a few other things. So I talked about the object ID being one of the required fields. And so this is really important. And typically we just kind of have a shortened kind of, you know, abbreviation for the collection, and then 001 or 0001 if it's going to end up in the thousands. And then we just, to add those, you just kind of hover over the cell itself, find that cross, and drop it down all the way so that the items are counted up in that portion. That little drag button that shows up with that with this little square here is really powerful for a lot of different features, and we'll show it again and again. And then when I'm editing Google Sheets, I'm often using the filter. And so we're going to filter today on this column C, the YouTube ID, and YouTube ID is a required file name, a required field. I'm sorry, I didn't actually go down one more. If you're going to use a YouTube video, and we also have if it was a Vimeo video, you would use a Vimeo ID. And so YouTube ID is required for that. And these are the ones that she has for YouTube itself. And to add a filter, you can either click this little button here, create a filter, or you can go to the data menu option, which is really powerful, and create a filter here. And what that does is it adds a filter to the top here that you can access via this little green line triangle. And the first thing we're going to want to do is we want to just look at those that have a YouTube ID. So these are the video objects in, this was an English professor's collection that we worked with last week. And so now we've got it limited down, and we can kind of look at the type and format and language here is what I'm going to focus on. And as you can see in this GH, for video, we want to have for our format video MP4, and that's the format that these videos were in when they went up to YouTube. So we're going to put that there. We'll put that there. And then for type, we're going to use for this typically for a regular JPEG, it would be image semicolon still image. For this, it's moving image, and then English for the language in the shortened version there. We're going to copy those. And you can also do that if you select one and then scroll over and hold shift down and hold that down. You can get that and then drag that down again with your triangle. And you might see a problem right away. Google Sheets is going to automatically count up with a lot of numbers at the end of strings, as it did in the format field here. One quick way to kind of get rid of that, especially on a larger one, is to grab 2. So I copied the MP4 version here and added it to this one. I'm going to grab those 2 and then scroll that down, and that'll take in the MP4 and put in the correct metadata. So we've used that to filter. We've used this filter to make our video items correct. Now we'd like to look at, and she just had images and videos. So now we're going to look at the images, which do not have a YouTube ID. And we can see here she had the top 2 right for image and still image. We're going to add language to this, and then we're going to do the same thing we did before. Scroll over here and fully go down. And it looks like I went a little too far, and so I'm going to select these 2 and delete them. You're going to want to make sure that you have that clean end in your CSV when you load it up. But here we are for this one. And so now I realize that, okay, I'm pretty good with my images. I'm going to clear this off, and I'm going to say, let's turn that off. And now I'm going to look at the file name here, and what this English professor's name is Jen Ladino. And what Jen missed was she didn't have her extensions on her file name. And so we want to add .jpeg to each of these. And so in order to do that, we're just going to use a quick formula. So I'm going to call this next one file name. And actually, I'm going to actually want this because we don't want to edit the ones that are there. So I'm going to leave this on. I did that wrong. Take that off. I'm just going to get the ones that actually have file names using the filter. So here I'm going to use a quick formula. I'm going to go equals, and I'm going to grab C3, and then I'm going to and, which an ampersand, and then in quotations, .jpeg. And the quotations add a string to a value from the cell. So I've got that. Again, I can, and then I just double click the cross, which is a quick way to drop it down in a place that is kind of controlled. It has also options on the left-hand side. So now I've got a good file name, but what if Jen had actually gone through and renamed all of her files into lowercase? I can actually do this one more time and say, okay, file name equals lower, and Google always will give you a little a little option there. I'm going to select that. See that, and that actually, the only one that needed to be lowercase was there, but we might as well just pull that down for the rest. And now here's an important part about working, especially with CollectionBuilder stuff and then in Google Sheets too. I want to just have the values for these, and I don't want. And I'm going to turn off my filter for here. I don't want to keep the formula, and I'll show you why. But so I'm going to copy this whole column, and I push Control C to do that. And then push Control V to push that back in. And we're going to paste values only. And what that did was it got rid of that formula. So there's no formula there anymore, whereas the formula is still here. And so now when I delete something from this that was based on that formula, and so I'll delete this, you can see this column got all messed up because we deleted the reference, but this column was the same because we turned that into just text. So I'll delete this column and we're ready to go. And so we also said, we want to make sure the title is there for everybody. So I'm just going to make this for now. We'll just have this be the object ID. And so we pushed that over. I pulled that down, and actually Google gave me a suggestion there. And then I'm gonna do the same copy and paste so that it's there. And then as you go further, you can edit that with the appropriate title. This is just kind of quick quick to work with. And now let's say we wanted to put all of these on the map and they all were, you know, she wanted them all geolocated. So I'll show you a quick way to work with Google Maps. This collection was based at our Taylor Wilderness. I love typing in front of people. The Taylor Wilderness Research Station, which is a wilderness research station here at the University of Idaho in the Frank Church Wilderness. And so this is where it is, and this is where most of the videos and testimonials were coming. And so in Google Maps, you can right click on a location, and it will pop up. And this is a nicer feature, newer feature for them. This first column here will be the latitude and longitude. You can click that. It will copy that to your clipboard. You can go back in and let's add that to this option here. And so we have, now we have a latitude and longitude in the latitude column. We'll need to split that. I'm going to drag this down all the way. And then we're going to do one more thing using this data column, which is always a really powerful column. And this is a great tool for a lot of things, especially working with strings. The split text columns. And this will probably automatically do this, but you can enter in custom delimiters and things like that here. And so this detected it automatically, but you could add a custom one, or you can actually set it up in your own metadata with, like, I often use a caret or some other strange character that's unlikely to be found, especially in larger data sets, and then split it. And you can see it did a really nice job. And so now we have latitude and longitude for all those options. And you need a latitude and longitude for your map visualizations to work in CollectionBuilder. And so there it is. I think that covers my quick little tutorial there. Thank you. And I hope I kind of reiterated some of the importance of those file names or of the fields that are required. And, you can go from there, and I'll turn it to Olivia.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of replicate the steps that you need to create your collection that you're going to do for homework tonight. So I'm going to be using some special demo data that we created just for CollectionBuilder, but you'll be doing these same steps later today or later tonight with the data that you've created, the objects that you've gathered together, the metadata that you might have started but are hopefully going to finish or at least start on tonight. So you're welcome to follow along with what I do here. I'll show you how to download the demo data, and you can even use that for practice later. I think we have enough time that you really can follow along, but if you're just a person that needs to sit and watch the first time you see something, that is totally okay too. I'm gonna go a little bit slowly and take breaks every now and then. So if you have questions, you can just jump in and ask questions. You can also put questions in the chat as I'm going through. And Devin and Evan, I'll get back to you and help you out there. But otherwise, I'll go ahead and get started. So what you're looking at now is the CollectionBuilder GH GitHub repository. And the CollectionBuilder GH is our version of CollectionBuilder that we use most often for teaching in the classroom as well as for teaching workshops. The GH stands for GitHub Pages, which is a feature that GitHub has that uses Jekyll to build out your repository as a website for free. So it's really conducive to teaching because people can walk away with a website right away. And I'll show you how to turn that on and how to get that all set up. Some things to note here, though, if you are new to GitHub, this might look kind of unfamiliar to you. Just kind of a layout of the land. Over here, I can see the organization that owns this repository. It's not always an organization, sometimes it's a person. So if you're looking at your own repositories, this is going to be your GitHub username. This is the name of my repository here. And then when I scroll down, the most of what you see is the repository's code. So this is, in this case, these are folders of files, and then these are files themselves. So you can tell by the little icons over on the left. Over on the right here, on the far right, you can see how when these files or folders were last updated. So you can kind of see the history there. And then one of the great things about GitHub is that it allows Git to track changes that you make to your repository. So these little notes that you see right here are actually called commits, and they indicate what was the last change made to this folder, what was the last change made to this file. So that is a really great feature that we love when we're collaborating or when we're working by ourselves. We can come back and see what was done before, and we'll kind of come back to some of this more in detail later. The other thing that you might notice is that there's a little drop down here that says main, and then if you click it, there are other what's called branches underneath the main branch. So as you're developing, usually you're doing your production development on the main branch, and then you do if you're like trying something out and you're not ready for it to go in the main branch yet, you have these other branches. So I'm just letting you know that because we'll see, we'll get introduced to branches pretty soon here in one of our next steps. So this is the GH repository. You're not going to actually, as you might have noticed, you can't actually edit this code. You need to be able to copy it into your own GitHub account, so you have access to a repository that you can actually edit and upload your objects and metadata to and create your digital collection from. And there's a really great way to do this. It's easy. All you have to do is click use this template. It's this green button up on the right here. And so that's what I'm going to do. If you're following along, please click this button with me, and I'm going to go ahead and click it. And I'm going to put this repository in my CollectionBuilder organization. You probably only have one option for owner, which is just you, and that's perfectly fine. That's what you want to do. And I'm going to give it a name. So when you're considering your repository name, remember that it's going to exist in the URL for your GitHub Pages site. So you want to keep it all lowercase and no special characters, no slashes. And if you have hyphens or underscores, that's okay. But just remember, no special characters or slashes. So I'm going to call mine DHSI demo.
No spaces.
No spaces either. Yeah, thanks. And you can give it a description if you want to. And then I'm going to select public, because in order for my repository to be generated into a website with GitHub Pages, it needs to be a public repository. So I'm going to make sure public is checked, and then I'm not going to check this box by include all branches. So this is why I showed you the branches. That's what this is asking you, is if you want to include all those development branches, and we don't want to, we just want the main branch. So don't check that. And then when you are ready, you can click the Create Repository from Template button. And it might take a few moments. But then you will have your own CollectionBuilder GH repository, and it's all the same code. You can see, but those commits from the repository didn't transfer. So I can see this is my initial commit, my first change that I ever made to the repository. I can see when I made it, and all of the code is the same as what the repository we just left. And the first thing that I want to do now is actually turn on GitHub Pages. And I'm doing this first because sometimes it can take a little while to generate. So just want to be sure that we get it set up. And this is all, remember, in the documentation too. So if you don't remember all the steps tonight, just check back there and follow along with the text too. But so the next thing I'm going to do to turn that on is I'm going to go up to the settings button, and it's over on the right in the top bar here. So I'm going to click on it. And this has all sorts of settings for your repository, but the one I'm really interested in is right here near the bottom. So I'm going to go over to the left of my page, and I'm going to go to the Pages section. And that just brings me to a place where I can set up GitHub Pages. You can see that GitHub Pages is currently disabled, so it's not running right now. But all I have to do to get it to run is click on this button right here that says none. And this allows me to select a branch. So if I had more branches, I'd have more to select from, but I only want main right now. So that is my choice and that's what I want. So I clicked main. And then I'm just going to leave this drop down as it is. And I'm going to click on save. And if you did that successfully, you're going to see this little message that says that your site is ready to be published at whatever URL that GitHub Pages gives you. And so it's going to be at, you can see there's my repository name in my URL. Now, the next step I'm going to take doesn't have to be, you don't have to do this, but it makes it really easy to get back to your website later. So if you want to, you can go ahead and copy this URL. I'm just going to highlight it and say copy link. And then I'm going to go back up to the top and over to the left and look for the code tab. So this takes me back to the beginning of my repository, the kind of the landing page. And over here on the right, you can see this little about section. So this is just a place where people can look when they come to your repository to see your description, if you've given it one, as well as what site, what GitHub Pages site or what website corresponds to this repository. And the way that you can edit it, you notice if you can't click on it, you can't click on it and edit it. You have to actually click on this little settings button right here next to about. And then that allows you to type in your description if you want to, and it has a specific spot for the website. So that is really great and makes it easy to find exactly where it needs to go. You can add some other details here if you want to, but that's all I want to do right now. So I'm going to click Save Changes. And then my website is here. And so GitHub Pages is working, it's set up. But if I clicked on that, it wouldn't, first of all, it takes a little while to generate. And second of all, I haven't added my collection items, so my objects or my metadata to my repository yet. So it's not gonna be my collection site yet. So I'm gonna go do that.
You will have a demo site running if once it gets built.
Yeah, I can check it out and see.
Nice.
Oh, it's good. Okay. So there's your demo site. But now we want to do the exciting thing, which is add our own material. So the demo data that you can use is actually right here in the repository, or there's a link to it in this repository. So I'm going to find that by scrolling down. So I'm going to scroll down all the way past the code until I get to the section that starts with this readme.md title. So this is the README file for my repository. And as you're looking at more repositories on GitHub, you'll notice that most all of them have it. And it's just a little description of what the repository is, why it exists. And it's really good to do for your collections in the future so that people coming to your GitHub repository know what all of this is about. There's some information at the top here about CollectionBuilder and how it's working, but I'm really interested in this demo CollectionBuilder with our workshop tutorial section. And this is where I'm going to find my metadata and my digital objects ready to go. And this is, it's called Psychiana Digital Collection Metadata and Psychiana Digital Collection Media Files. The reason it's called that is because it's based on our Psychiana digital collection in our own U of I digital collections, which is worth checking out if you want to. This is just a subset of data from that collection. And that collection is based on a set of ephemera from a mail order religion that was running out of Moscow, Idaho in the mid 20th century. So there's some really interesting stuff in there if you do check it out. So right now I'm interested in starting with my objects first. Actually, let's take a break real quick before I start this. Does anybody have questions if you're following along? Or does anybody need some time to get caught up with where we are?
So Adam has a question about how you keep your own template up to date. So when you make a template, when you generate from template, you'll notice that there is a, if you Olivia, could you scroll back to the top of your
Yep.
repository there? You'll notice right below the repository name, it says generated from CollectionBuilder GH, but there isn't a automatically configured relationship between those repositories. You can't just immediately pull it over like a fork. We suggest that you don't fork it because a fork is really designed just for if you want to contribute back to CollectionBuilder GH, so or to any of the other projects. And so a fork is like a branch on GitHub. And so it's kind of for a development workflow where you're going to make a copy of the code, you're going to change it, and then you're going to contribute it back to the original one. And so it doesn't have all the full features of a repository if you have a forked repository. And so that's why we use that generate from template. And essentially, you're going to get it at that state that it is right then, and you're not going to be getting automatic updates from our repository. In general, if you want to, you can pull in the stuff, anything that happens in the template to update your version. But a lot of times people don't really want to do that. They just want to stay with the version that they have at that point, because we hope that you get further along and you'll actually end up doing a lot of customization. And then if you pull in all those updates, you might be breaking that or making it more complicated. And so, yeah, there's not an easy way to like just immediately have it like pulling updates all the time from the CollectionBuilder version of that template. But we also don't necessarily think that that's necessary, and sometimes not desirable if you're going to do a lot of customization. Does that answer your question, Adam, or do you want to elaborate any more about that?
No, that was perfect. Thank you very much.
Good.
Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, I will keep moving. So I'm going to scroll back down to my README. I'm going to go to the demo section, and I'm going to start with my media files. So I'm just going to click this link, and it should start an automatic download of your files as a zip folder. So I'm just going to save that file. And that is going to go, it's going to go to my downloads folder. It's probably going to go to your downloads folder too, unless you've set up a different spot for your downloads to go. And I am going to find it. So it's demoobjects.zip. I'm going to right click and I'm going to extract it. If you're on a Mac, you can just double click to extract it from the zip file. So I'm going to say extract. And then I'm going to click into that folder. And now I can see all of the different types of media that are in this folder. There's a few MP3s, a lot of JPEGs, and a lot of PDFs. So we're good to go. I don't need to do anything to these since they're the demo data, they're ready to go. But now I want to actually upload them to my CollectionBuilder repository. So I'm going to keep that file explorer open. If you're on a Mac, you'll keep your Finder open. And then I'm going to scroll back up here to the code in my repository. And I'm looking for the objects folder. So that's right here in the middle here. And if I click on that objects folder, it's going to take me to see what's in there in the objects folder right now. And so there's some demo objects in there. You don't need to worry about them. They're not taking up much space. So I'm just going to add my objects for my collection to this folder. And to do that, I'm going to go up to the right here where it says there's an option to go to file, and then there's this option to add file. And that's the one I want. I want to add my my objects. So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to say upload files. So you can either create a new file or upload. I'm going to upload. And then you can either navigate in your file explorer to your files, or you can drag them and drop them, which is easier for me to do right now. So I'm going to come back to my file explorer. I'm going to press Control A to select all of my objects. If you're on a Mac, that's Command A to select them all. And then I'm just going to drag them over. And there's 66 of them, so it's going to take a second for them all to upload. But I can close my file explorer now. And we'll just wait for this to upload. All right, so now all these files are ready, but you notice they didn't just automatically get uploaded. They didn't automatically just appear in my repository yet. I have to actually document my change. And so when you're doing that, you're making what's called a commit message. And a commit message is just a really short statement of what you did to change the repository at this point in time. It's a message for yourself in the future to know if you need to come back to this point. It's also a message for your collaborators if you end up collaborating on a collection. And I'm just going to say add collection objects. If you have a longer note, so commit message are limited in the amount of characters you can use, but if you have a longer note, you can add a description. And you'll want to commit to the main branch. That's where we're committing. And I'm just going to go ahead and click the green commit changes button. And that will, it might take a minute since I had so many files, but once that's done, my objects will be committed and I'll be able to come back, 5 days from now and see when I made this change to my repository. Okay, so here I can see what my latest commit was. It was add collection objects. So there it is. I can see where I made it in my objects folder. And I can see when I made it. But the next thing I want to do to get my collection working is go to my metadata. And we also have a demo metadata spreadsheet. So that is this link right here, Psychiana Digital Collection Metadata. I'm going to go ahead and open that in a new tab. And a couple things to note now. I'm going to make a copy of this metadata. And in order to do this next step, you need to be logged into Google Drive. So make sure you're logged in, and otherwise you won't be able to do this. So I'll give you a second just to make sure. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go look at the top here in my and go to the file button. And then about 4 choices down is the make a copy button. And you won't actually have to make any edits to this metadata, but this is for your own homework when you're copying our metadata template. You'll want to make a copy this way and choose where it goes. I'm just going to go out one folder and put it there. And you can title it anything you want. So maybe just Psychiana metadata. And I'm going to click OK. And so this brings me to a Google Sheet that I can actually edit. So you don't have the ability to edit this one, but you do have the ability to edit whichever one you just copied, or the same spreadsheet in your own Google Drive that you just copied. And so this has all of the required fields that Devin mentioned. We have our object IDs. We have our file names with the file extensions. And if I go and I look in my the folder of objects that I just downloaded, I can double check to make sure those the file name extensions match in terms of case. So you might do that as you're creating your metadata too. I have one YouTube video where I have my YouTube ID in that field, and that's just a little ID that's right at the end of your whatever YouTube video URL that you're looking at. So it comes right at the end of your YouTube URL. I have titles. Format is the important field as well. It's all filled in, as well as some of those other fields like lat and long that are going to be required to generate a map. So definitely check this demo data out as you are creating your own metadata later. And it might be good to use as a model as you're doing yours. But since it's all ready to go, now I don't need to make any changes. I can just click on File. And then I'm going to download it. And I want to download it as a comma separated values file, or a CSV. So once you've found this under download, you're going to click on it. And don't open it. You actually want to save it. So if it gives you a choice, make sure that save is selected. And I'm going to click OK. And the reason that you don't want to open it is because often your computer uses Excel as the default application to open spreadsheets. And as Devin mentioned, that messes with the encoding. We need our encoding to be in UTF-8. So it's really important that you don't open it in Excel yet or ever. You just download it, and then we're going to upload it straight to GitHub. So I'm going to go find it. It's in my downloads folder. And again, without opening it, I am going to just select it, select the title of the file name. And to do that on a Windows, you can press F2. On a Mac, you can press Enter, or you can double click on either, I think. And you're going to give your metadata a file name. And here, again, this should be all lowercase. It can have underscores or hyphens, but it shouldn't have slashes or spaces or special characters. So I'm just going to call it, just give it a really simple name. I'm just going to call it Psychiana. And notice I can see my, my file extension. I didn't edit that or anything. I just edited the file name itself. So I'm going to leave that there for a second. I'm just going to move this file explorer off to the side. And I'm going to go back to my repository and go to the, go up to the top of your code and look for the data folder. It has an underscore in front of it. I'm going to click on that. And then this is a really important folder for your project. This is where all of the data that Jekyll is going to use as it builds your site lives. And we'll talk more about Jekyll later, so don't worry if you don't understand that yet, but you'll kind of come to realize how important this folder is later on. So there's a bunch of CSVs in here right now. I'm going to add one to it. I'm going to add my metadata. So I'm going to do just what we did with the objects. I'm going to come up to add file. And then I'm going to go to upload files. And once again, I'm just going to grab my file and drag it over. So that went a lot quicker than our objects, you'll notice, but I can see it's ready to go. It's right here. And I'm going to give it a commit message and say add metadata. And then I'm going to say commit changes. Okay, so let's take another break so people can get caught up and we can answer any questions that might have come up.
David had a question about how to get file names into Google Sheets. So yeah, so the first step of your metadata is probably going to be having digital objects, having those file names listed out and put into your Google Sheets. I think there's not a visual way to do that. Is that right, Olivia? I usually use a list on the command line to start mine. And that's mentioned in the docs somewhere. Let me find it for you. Unless Olivia or Devin, you have a different way of doing that. I'm not really sure.
No, the list is what I would use. I don't know of any other way to do it.
So this is a little command line thing. You are going to, today we're not getting onto the command line and talking about opening a terminal or anything. But if you want to go further, as we're going to do this week, we are going to be using the terminal. And so this is a pretty easy way, the link I put in the chat, where you use the command ls on your terminal to create the list of file names. And then it's just going to be in a plain text file, and there'll be one file name on each line of that plain text file. You just copy those and paste, and it'll automatically fill out one row in your spreadsheet. And so either you can have that lined up with the metadata that you've already created, or you'll start from that point and then add your metadata in based on those file names. Does that help, David?
Yep, that's exactly what I was asking. Thanks.
Great.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, well, there's one other thing you need to do to get your site working, And that is the next step I'm going to demonstrate. So I'm in the base of my repository, and I'm going to scroll down close to the bottom, and I'm going to find the config YAML file. So that begins with an underscore, and the name of the file is config, and it has this ending YML, which stands for YAML data type. I'm going to click on it. And this is my config file. So this is where I'm going to configure the site settings for my site. And this is really important. Your site won't work unless you do this step first after uploading all of your data. So you'll notice a few things about this file. It is made up of a series of key value pairs. So these are variables. I can zoom in a little bit more. These are variables to the left of a colon, and then to the right of that colon is that variable's value. So it's just a series of variables that you're going to go down the file filling in values for. The other type of text you will see on this file is the comments. So every line of text that starts with a pound sign is a comment, and that is there for you, the user. It's not computer readable, it's human readable, and it tells you what you need to put in that next variable. So you'll notice right now I can't actually edit this file. So this will be something you notice as you're working with GitHub. You actually need to click this edit this file button. It looks like a pencil up on the top right here. I'm going to click that. And now I'm actually in a space where I can edit my file. And the way that this this file is set up is it's sectioned off, and that's made pretty clear by the comments. So the first part is the URL variables. The second part is the site settings, and so on. And I want to just edit the one variable in the URL variables here. And I can do that. This is the source code variable. So this is just referring to where is your GitHub repository located, so that people can click a button from your site and go see the code and learn from what you did that way. So that is up in my URL up here in my browser. I'm just going to copy from DHSI demo over to the beginning and leave this edit main config YAML off of it. I don't want to copy that part. You can tell by the structure of the URL here that you just want your GitHub username as well as your repository name to be in the URL. So I'm going to just paste that right over the current data for that variable. And now I'm good to go for the URL variables. And I'm going to scroll down to site settings. So this is going to be where you're going to edit the title. So the title is what appears right here in the banner. And you're going to edit the tagline. So that's this little description that's right underneath the title. And you're going to also edit the longer description that appears right down here on the home page. The longer description is actually also going to be used in your site's meta tags. So it's going to help, the information you put there is going to help with search engine optimization as well. You can also put your GitHub username or your real name as author for the site. So I'm going to go ahead and edit these. So I'm going to say DHSI demo collection as my title, and then give it a little tagline. And the description is probably going to be, 1 to 3 sentences, maybe. One thing about it that you'll need to note is that it has quotation marks around it. So if I delete that text, if you delete the text, the demo text that's there, just be sure to keep those quotation marks around the new text that you write. And the reason for this is that it makes sure that that Jekyll recognizes that that all of the data that you put in this field is related to this one variable. So if I were to not have the quotation marks and I said something like this and then put a colon, that is going to actually confuse the computer because it doesn't realize that it thinks that anything with a colon after it is a variable. So if I put quotation marks around it though, I'd be good to go. So that just is a protects you from, accidentally breaking your site by putting a colon in without knowing that you're not supposed to. So I'm going to say the DHSI demo. And then author, I'm going to leave that as collection builder, but you could put your username there, or your real name too. And now
author
sorry.
doesn't display anywhere.
Yeah.
It's just in the meta tags, so it's just kind of for your own self citation, I guess.
Yeah, I'll put mine there. Okay, so collection settings are probably the most important part of this section, because this is what connects, it indicates to Jekyll that this is the metadata file you're going to be using to actually build out your site. So it allows the computer to go and know which metadata folder to look in to grab all that information and populate your site. And so this is really important that you don't do a typo, and all this is the file name of your metadata for your collection. So in order to avoid doing a typo, I always go and find that file that I just uploaded and just copy it. And don't copy the file extension. So don't copy .csv, just copy the file name. And then you're just going to come right back in and paste that file name over the current file name. Again, no CSV, no .csv, no file extension, just the file name itself. So once you've done that, you could add Google services if you wanted to, like a Google Analytics ID. This is stuff you might do later. But if you wanted to add one right now, you just delete that pound sign like I just did. So see how that's a comment right now, and then I delete it and it stops being a comment and it actually becomes something that the computer can read. So I'm gonna just comment that out again. And then scroll down a little bit to the robots exclude section. So this is going to be a feature that allows you to block Google from indexing your site. So it's especially important as you're doing your site development, because you probably don't want it indexed until it's ready to be viewed. So go ahead and just delete that pound sign, and so that no index true is now a true variable, and that will mean that Google is going to leave your site alone. And then you just want to remember, when you're done with your collection, you actually want it to be found, you'd come back in and comment that out again by putting that pound sign back in front. Build settings are probably something you don't need to worry about, but we'll talk about some of the words you see here later in the week. So I'm going to say configure site for my commit message and commit my changes. So now this is the exciting part, because now I'll actually be able to view my metadata that I just uploaded. But it's going to take a few seconds for GitHub pages to generate. And what I'm watching for as I'm waiting for that is right here, and where I'm kind of hovering my mouse to the left of this little commit hash, is there's going to be a green check mark that shows up. But before the green check mark, there's actually an orange dot, and that says that GitHub Pages is working on it. We're building your site, but it's not quite ready yet. If I refresh, now there's a green check mark. So that means my site was built without any trouble and it's ready to be viewed. So I'm going to click on my URL, and I can see my title, my tagline for my site, my description, and then most importantly, I can see my objects are showing up, which is great. I can see my metadata is populating, my subjects, my locations boxes over here on the right. I can click on browse and view that I have 67 items, which is exactly right. That's what I had in my metadata. And then do a scroll through on your own collections to make sure if something's broken, if an item isn't showing up correctly, you'll be able to tell, because it's not, the image isn't showing up in, or the icon isn't showing up in the browse page. So that's a good place to check first. You can click on an item and view the item page too, and check out what metadata is showing up. So the important thing at this step of the process is just to make sure that your items are showing up correctly. And then moving on tomorrow, what we're going to be focused on is getting started with, well, first of all, we're going to show you how to pull this down to your computer and work on it that way. But then after that, we'll be customizing it so that you have a say over, what metadata is showing up here on the right and where your map is centered and what is showing up on the subjects page and all of that kind of customization stuff. So I think that let's take a little break because we have some time and then we can answer questions. And before we end, we'll talk about homework.
The one thing I wanted to mention, Olivia, that description tag in the config YAML, a lot of times that's the initial little paragraph underneath the Google discovery. So for our digital collections, we typically try to get really short, quick subjects, maybe time frame, the amount of objects, the type of objects, just real short, so that when somebody is doing a Google search and they hit it, they can be like, oh, cool, go. So it is important for discovery purposes. That was great, Olivia. Thank you.
It looks like Anne would like to see the GitHub pages set up again. So I'd be happy to show that. So Anne, I'm back here in the base of my repository. And I'm looking over, I'm going to zoom out a little bit because I've over zoomed there. So here I'm looking at this top bar here, right under your repository name. And I can see I'm on the code tab. And I want to go all the way to the end and select the settings tab. And then now I'm on my settings. There's a lot of settings I can change, but the one I'm looking for is over on the left, all the way towards the bottom. It's the pages setting. So I'm going to click on that. And then if you don't have GitHub pages set up yet, you will have this will show up, GitHub pages will show up, and then you'll look at the source section, and then the first dropdown that you see will say none. You want to click this dropdown and change that to main. So that's indicating that you're building your site from the main branch. You're going to leave the next dropdown as it is, and then you're going to press save. And then as soon as you do that, you'll get a little notification that your site was published, and it will give you the URL that it's published at. So I'll just leave that there for a second.
Olivia, could you also go back to your home and show the commits area?
Yeah. So these are all the changes that I made since we started today. So I can see, I can go back to my add collection objects and see each object that I uploaded. I can go to my add metadata commit and see that I added a brand new file. And then I can go to my configure site commit. And so this is what you'll start to see as you start making edits in your site to the files that are already there. You can see this is how Git is tracking the changes that you make. So I can see this on this line of code, I changed one thing, and that was the name of my repository. On this line of code, I changed the value of title, and so on along down the line. So everything in red is what I deleted. Everything in green is what I added.
We have more time than I thought we would. So can we go around and we have a smaller group than we thought we would. And, we really wanted to do introductions, but we were worried we had 27 people and we would kill this first, class and not get this far. But I think we got far enough that maybe we can just go around the Zoom room and introduce ourselves if everyone's okay with that. And maybe just say, where you're coming from and maybe what your collection's about. And then we'll go over the homework for tonight after that.
I was wondering, Devin, do we want to just go over the homework and then stop the recording and then do introductions?
That's smarter. Yeah,
okay.
That would be good.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, go ahead, Olivia, and then we'll stop the recording and then we'll have some free time.
There's the link to the issues in the chat.
Oh, great. Okay, hold on. Let me share my screen. Okay, so your homework is going to be, let me pull it over here. So I'm in the document, our Google Doc, where we have our updated outlines as well as our homework. I wanted to highlight first that we'd really like you to use your own data because we think it's so much more fun when you do that, when you have your own objects and metadata. But if you want some extra practice or really don't want to take the time to create your own, you can use the Psychiana collection that I just used today, or you can use this other demo collection that we've put together. So there's metadata and objects that are in this document that you can look at as well. And then, so the way that this document is set up is that each day, I'll go to the top here, each day starts with the day, and then we have some learning objectives that we'd like to accomplish that day, and we have an outline of what we do during the course. Sometimes there's links up here, so check back to if you want to see something we looked at. And then we'll go down to the homework section. And this is the step-by-step homework that you'll be doing. So the first thing that you're going to do tonight is you're going to create your own new repository. You're going to use this link here to get to the CollectionBuilder GH repository. And then you're going to follow I'm going to make this bigger again. You're going to follow the instructions that we did earlier today to create the template, to create your repository from the template. And there's instructions here in the documentation for how to create your own repository. So if you've forgotten or just want some extra details, you can come here to view how to generate from template.
And if you noted there, she didn't have that use this template button because Olivia wasn't signed in. So that's actually that's actually something that we've got lots of like, oh my gosh, everything's broken. So make sure you're signed into GitHub when you're on there. And once you are signed in, then they use this template button, it shows up.
Yeah. Good point. Okay. You're going to create your collections metadata, and you can check the documentation here for metadata guidelines. And then this link will be really important because right here is where you'll find the CollectionBuilder GH metadata template. So you're just going to make sure you're logged into Google Drive and then do File, make a copy, and start here for your creating your metadata. Some of you might have already started, and that's fine too. And then double check back with that documentation to make sure you have all the required fields and that your files and file name extensions match in the documentation too, or in the metadata too. You're going to add your prepared objects to the objects folder. So here's the documentation link for that. You're going to turn on GitHub Pages. Here's the documentation link for that. Adjust the config YAML as I just did. You're going to find the documentation for that as well. You'll also upload your metadata. I guess that's in this earlier step. And then the part that that we haven't talked about yet is you're going to do something called creating an issue in the repository that I just made. So let me go back over here, and I'm going to first of all copy this URL and put it here. So you're going to go to this repository, make sure you're logged into GitHub, and it will look something like this. And right here, I'm back in the tabs bar here. So I'm looking at code, and then right to the right of code, there's this issues button. And when I click on that, this is a feature that lets us create issues, anything wrong that you come across in the code somewhere, even if it's not your repository, you can create an issue to notify the person, the owner of the repository, what needs to be done or what problem you're having and what could be done about it. I'm going to jump over to our GH pages, our CollectionBuilder GH version. So I can see here we have a lot of issues. We use these a lot of times as just like to-do lists or things that we're thinking about. It's great for collaboration as well as, notifying. You might notify someone on a repository you don't own, but you also might make an issue on a repository that you do own. And then you can kind of keep track of it until you finish it. And then at that point, you can close it. So I can see that there's some closed issues too, things that we've accomplished. So we want you to actually make an issue tonight just to get familiar with the process. And the important things to include in your issue are, I'll just make one. So I'm going to make a title. I'm just going to make the title my name. You can make it whatever you want. You can have a little like say I made we were originally going to have you do introductions here, but since you're introducing yourself in person, just say I made a collection about dogs or whatever you made a collection about. And then the two things you're going to add are your repository link. And so I'm just going to open this in a new tab, grab the link to my GitHub repository and paste that in. And then I'm going to add a collection website link. And that is this URL that is my collections URL. I'm going to copy that and paste it there. And that way we'll all be able to take a look at each other's collections. There won't be much to them right now, but I think it'll be really great later in the week when we can all kind of do show and tell and see what everybody's looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and submit my issue. And now if I go to issues, there's my issue that I've created. And again, so the link to this repository is now in the document, your homework here in number 6. And you can just click on this link right here, and that will take you to that GitHub repository. The last thing that we'd like you to do is just make sure that you've had time to set up your software for tomorrow's session. We'll start pulling things down to our computer and actually work in the text editor a little bit. And if you have trouble with that, just shoot us an email, come to our office hours, and we will help you get it ready to go. Or if you come across trouble tomorrow when we're actually working, we will help you after class as well. It can be headache inducing sometimes, so don't worry if you have a lot of trouble. We've dealt with this a lot, and we can help you get it to where it needs to be. Devin or Evan, did I forget anything?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't we just go in around and I'll call your name and just give a brief introduction. Tell us where you're from.
Stop the recording, or?
And we'll stop the recording before that happens.
Yeah, sorry, hold on.
Good.